All right, y'all. Are y'all ready, Rob Core? Are y'all ready, Rob Core? Ladies and gentlemen, are y'all ready for this greatness? Look, here's the thing. Over the course of the next 6 weeks, we are going to count down to the single greatest Johnny Storm moment ever in the history of Marvel Comics. Johnny Storm's legit. Here's the thing, man. Folks sleep on Johnny Storm, but here's the crazy thing, man. The end of this video is gonna blow your all's mind because man, y'all are gonna be screaming at me to upload the next part once this is done. So what this does here is this initially picks up with the main Fantastic Four team itself, right? The neutral zone, right? Kind of between the United States territory and that was claimed by the forever city of the High Evolutionary. If you guys recall the few videos that we did before, and this is why I say everything that Hickman does, you got to make sure you recall it. So if you guys are unfamiliar, make sure you guys check the link in the description. It'll have the link in the playlist so you can get caught up. And so what we found out was that at some point in time, the High Evolutionary had built a city that had what was literally an evolution engine, right? An ascension engine. When this thing powered up and it hit 100%, it would hyper evolve the population of the world. The inverse happened, and basically it didn't really affect the world, but it did affect the people there, and the High Evolutionary basically abandoned it, right? Now, as a result of that, the city was discovered by Mole Man, who got the attention of the Fantastic Four. Stuff happened, and then ultimately the city rose to the surface. But with it being the dwelling of the Mole people, right, Mole Man and the Mole people, it became its own sovereign nation. And so what you're dealing with right now is basically border skirmishes, right? As a United States territory versus this sovereign independent nation, you end up with border skirmishes that take place as a result of that. But that is not the main focus here. That's the thing going on in the background. What we end up doing, because I know y'all looked at the video, I know y'all saw the thumbnail said the return of Dr. Doom. I'm not gonna leave you hanging. What we end up doing here is switching over to Valeria. Right now, of course, Valeria, ever the curious girl and whatever it is, ends up sneaking into the lab of Reed Richards. Now, one of the things to know is that over the years in Marvel Comics, Valeria Richards' intelligence had been hinted at, but it was never really established until you got to this run by Jonathan Hickman. For those of you guys who aren't familiar with Valeria, of course, she's the daughter of Reed and Susan, and there's a whole lot of history there regarding the in-continuity theory that like Franklin Richards controls the Marvel Universe. He's the reason nobody ages, different things like that. And it's more of a fan theory than anything that was confirmed by Marvel. But the idea behind this is that Valeria, Reed Richards, and Dr. Doom are usually considered the three smartest people in the entirety of the Marvel Universe. Now, you do have Moon Girl, who's part of the equation now, and arguably she's up there. But the reality is that when the Fantastic Four returned after All New, All Different Marvel, and Valeria Richards showed up, Marvel established quick, fast, and in a hurry that Lanella is not on the same level of intelligence as Valeria. She's not as smart, right? So right there, like we know that Moon Girl is intelligent, she's not where Valeria is. And so the result of this is that Valeria, as she goes through like the air ducts and so on, and gets to the lab of Reed, her immediate reaction is just like, this is the crappiest security ever. But the reality is that once Valeria gets down into her father's lab, she kind of starts poking around, looking at different things. And then of course, one of the holograms kicks up that starts talking about work logs, and of course, starts feeding this information to Valeria. Now, for the most part, she's basically told everything that we covered at the beginning of this. The Council of Reeds, the idea that Reed Richards was going through and looking for every alternate reality that basically had some beneficial outcome as a result of civil war, secret invasion, the formation of the Illuminati, all that kind of stuff. All that information he had looked for, again, that's in the playlist. Make sure you guys go check that out. But it's basically all that stuff that she's caught up with, learning her father's research. More so than that, he told Susan Storm that he had taken apart the bridge, which is the device he uses to look into alternate realities, right? To see how alternate universes function under any particular event. And once she realizes what's going on, and once she gets the full breadth of information, she does the only logical thing that a person would do in this situation. But before we find out what that is, we jump to Latveria. Now, there's a few things to know here when it comes to Dr. Doom. One, he's got his assistant Boris, who's a really cool guy. Boris is cool, man. You don't see a whole lot of him, but Boris is pretty awesome, right? He's like the guy that Victor Von Doom trusts implicitly, right? It's like, woe betide the poor soul who decides to mug Boris. But here's the thing, right? So what we end up doing here, and it's really kind of Dr. Doom, flashing back to the events of the Intelligentsia. Now, in Marvel Comics, the Intelligentsia is totally different from the way it was in the MCU. In the MCU, the Intelligentsia is the result of just lazy writing. In Marvel Comics, the idea of the Intelligentsia is that it's a coming together of the world's greatest evil minds, right? So like the leader, MODOK, all those guys, and they've pulled off some pretty daring things. And in fact, they've come close to eradicating the entirety of the superhero superhero community on several occasions. They're pretty dangerous, man, and they're pretty capable. But the idea behind this is that at one point, Dr. Doom actually turned against the intelligentsia. Following that, the intelligentsia had the idea of effectively lobotomizing the smartest minds in the world, or stripping them of their intelligence. Reed Richards, those different guys, Bruce Banner, and including Dr. Doom. What this means is that, of course, Dr. Doom is not lobotomized, but he's not as intelligent as he was before. And so as a result of this and the fact that he hasn't quite come back from that, he ends up basically telling Boris to bring back Christophe Bernard. Now, for those of the guys who are unfamiliar with Christophe Bernard, he doesn't have the most significant role in this story. He's actually has a much bigger role in Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers than he does here. But Christophe Bernard was introduced back in Fantastic Four 247 during John Byrne's run, right? He was created and drawn by John Byrne because John Byrne was handling the entirety of Fantastic Four at the time. The idea behind Christophe Bernard is that Dr. Doom had actually taken him under his wing, and because he saw him as essentially a surrogate son, that he actually ended up putting Christophe Bernard in a position to where he would eventually become the heir of Latveria. That's the reason why Christophe Bernard's being recalled here. There was some stuff that went on in between. Christophe was exiled, he's being brought back, that kind of thing. But in the midst of this conversation, Valeria Richards teleports to Dr. Doom. Now, remember the message that was given to Valeria when Franklin Richards from the future came back to the past. He told her all hope lies with Doom. The significance of this is that when Dr. Doom's like, okay, what's going on here? Notice he doesn't immediately have her arrested or anything like that. And the reason why, and one of the things that Hickman kind of hits on here, but it's not overly stated, is that Dr. Doom knows exactly how smart Valeria is, and he respects her for her intelligence. Now, there is also history between the two, and in fact, Dr. Doom is well versed with how capable she is, and it's one of those things where Reed and Susan simply just don't know, because again, Valeria doesn't tell them because she calculated in her brain what the logical conclusion would be, and that it would actually have a negative effect on the family if she revealed her intelligence to everybody. So because of that, Dr. Doom is one of the only people who knows. Again, Hickman kind of building on that here, but Dr. Doom respects the intelligence of Valeria, and he respects Valeria herself. Now, those of you guys who are aware of Dr. Doom, it takes a lot to get that guy's respect, right? Like, to be in a position where Dr. Doom's like, hey man, you know what? I like you. It takes a lot to get to that point. It's very rare that you see Dr. Doom who's like, you know what? I'd like the cut of your jib, and ultimately decides that he wants to be your friend. If Dr. Doom, under any normal circumstance, comes to you and says, hey, you know what? Let's be friends, he's probably going to destroy you because he doesn't like you, right? That kind of a thing. So it's one of those really, really cool moments where you see this sort of camaraderie. Now, for those of you guys who did follow our videos on Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers run, this moment right here is one of the moments that really has a great sort of involvement in that story, where Valeria plays a pretty significant role. She's the one that figures out there's no way to end the multiversal collapse. That's why she tells Reed that you can't win. It's time to figure out how not to lose. There's a big difference there, that sort of thing. But of course, she basically tells him what was going on, right? That ultimately Reed Richards created a device, or even a weapon if you want to call it that. He was supposed to dismantle it. He didn't. And so when Dr. Doom asks, what did you do when you found this bit of a discovery, that she says, I asked myself, what would Uncle Doom do? And what Valeria did is she turned on the bridge and entered the portal. Now remember, what awaits on the other side are the mad celestials and what's left of the Council of Reeds. Because remember, when Reed went through that portal and he met the Council of Reeds, one of those versions of Reed drew the attention of a crazed group of celestials from an alternate reality who basically started killing every version of Reed in the council that they could find. So when Valeria gets here, she basically finds those lobotomized versions of Dr. Doom that the council was keeping below the Citadel, but she also finds the remnants of those members of the council who were killed by the mad celestials. The crazy thing here is that the war has been going on this entire time. The whole time that ever since we ended that story and we went on throughout the rest of the Fantastic Four, that war has still been happening. Those guys have still been fighting off those mad celestials using a combination of their own powers, traveling to other realities, grabbing different arms and armament, all that kind of stuff. But when this bridge is open and when these guys get there, basically the council ends up following Valeria, because once the bridge was closed, there was no conceivable means of escape, right? So it was literally the last stand at the Alamo. But Valeria is now their way out. Along the way, there are a few members who are destroyed by the mad celestials, and what this means is there are only 4 Reeds left. Now, one of the things that I want to establish here is we will follow their stories. We will find out what happens with these different versions of Reed, and each one of them are going to have a significant role to play over the course of this story. So we're not going to forget about them. But ultimately, once they get back to Reed's, the main Marvel Universe's Reed's lab, the portals reopen and they end up taking off to different places around the world. And so once we jump back to Valeria's conversation with Dr. Doom, that basically Valeria is just like, my father father made the wrong choice. He had the option to basically fix everything across the multiverse, and instead, he chose familial relations. He chose you, and he chose me. Now, here's a very important distinction to understand here. Here's a really, really important thing. There is a theory that's never been confirmed by Marvel Comics that in Jonathan Hickman's Avengers: The New Avengers run, the character Black Swan is an alternate reality version of Valeria. Again, it's never been confirmed, not that I'm aware of, but the idea that that version of Black Swan could be that cold-hearted, she could be that disconnected from her emotions, and she could really just be like, I destroy whole worlds because it's the only way to save the multiverse, especially her connection to Doctor Doom, and that Doctor Doom had formed the Black Swans in the first place, that all this hints at the fact that this is really why and how it is that Valeria can be the way that she is. She's more practical than she is emotional. And in that response, that's why she says, it was stupid of my father to walk away from saving everything and to focus on his family instead. It's such a selfish thing to do. It's like having the cure for cancer in your hand and throwing it away because the wide-scale implementation of that cure would take you away from your family seemingly for the rest of your life, right? And your family is more important than saving the world, right? Depending on who you're talking to, one of those decisions is better than the other. Which one depends on the person. But at the end of the day, when she asked this question, why would somebody make such a selfish decision like that? The response of Dr. Doom is like, I'm not the right person to ask, but why did you come here? And she simply says, all hope lies in Doom. She's doing what she thinks the right thing is to do. And when Doom's like, what are you talking about? She's like, I came here because my father's going to need your help somewhere along the line. He's going to need you, right? He's going to need your aid. And when his question is like, why in the world would I want to help Reed Richards? The response of Valeria is, okay, so like when I got here, I honestly had no real clue why it is that you would want to help my dad. And honestly, I still don't necessarily know. But while I've been telling you all this, she says, I've been watching you closely, and what I notice is that something's not quite right. Delayed pupil response, your breathing is slightly erratic, and there's a slight twitch in your right hand. You've recently suffered brain damage, haven't you? She immediately picks up on the fact that Dr. Doom's mental capacity has been reduced. And so when he answers her truthfully and says, yes, that's correct, which again is another instance of the amount of respect Dr. Doom has for Valeria, then she's like, then that's it. You help my father when he needs you, and I will find a way to restore your intelligence back to the way it was before. Do we have a deal? And the response of Doom is, yes, we have a deal. And so once the whole thing with like the neutral zone and the border skirmishes and all that end, when Reed gets back to the Baxter Building, he asks Valeria like, well, how was your day? Did anything go on? She's like, no, it wasn't a huge deal. It wasn't anything that I couldn't handle. Now, for the ending, here's the thing, man. This is why I said it's gonna blow your mind. Remember the body of Galactus from the future that was brought to the past? Remember that? It was turned into like a time traveling machine, and it was brought here, and then just it died when it was being used. Like, you remember that? Like the body was just totally incinerated. The body was buried by Reed Richards. And it's a fair thing. It's a reasonable thing to do, to bury a dead body. Here's the problem with that. Out in space is a guy who surfs the spaceways, the Silver Surfer, my friend, and a kind of tug. Something told him he needed to come to Earth, something that he couldn't quite describe. The issue is that when he got here, he realized what it was that was pulling him here. A need to know, a desire. When Silver Surfer gets to Earth, Silver Surfer finds this dead body of Galactus. And let me tell you something, man, he's gonna go inform the big dude himself. And when Galactus gets here, when he gets to Earth, shit is gonna pop off. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.